Órale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin, Familia. NFL draft is, we're in the thick of it. We are right in the middle, and La Grasa and everything is just awesome. Prospects are just coming out of our ears. We had the combine. We were going to do this originally last week, but we pushed that a week, and we're glad that we did because Familia, well, first off, I want to make sure you're giving us a like and subscribe on YouTube, Familia FFB on YouTube. Get in there, just get, we're going to get great content. We're going to have the quarterbacks coming up after this, and then just a lot of off-season content coming up. And you know what's going to be coming up in June. It's going to be those NFL insiders. But hey, right now, one of my insiders, one of my compadres when it comes to the NFL draft is mi amigo Christian Williams. I mean, Familia, you know what? You know him from the Football Guys Dynasty Football Show. He's one of the three amigos in there. So him with Jeff Bell, who you heard from in the last episode, and Kevin Coleman, who already told me he's going to do the next one. So we're going to get that one on the schedule. But yeah, you know him from there. You know him from the Debbie Royale. Such great content. Make sure you're checking out that Football Guys rookie guide. Okay, we're going to let him talk about it in a second. So get in there. So we talked, as I mentioned, we talked about running backs last year, and we're running it back again. So and we have him as the charter member of the Isaiah Davis fan club. So understand that reports that he's going to jump off a roof if he goes in round 2, we're going to find out if they're for real. But no, let's welcome in mi amigo. We go to the same barber, so let's get a big bienvenidos. Christian Williams, mi amigo, welcome. Estás en tu casa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. That was an awesome intro. Shout out to Jeff and Kevin. You mentioned the rookie guide. They're probably still in there working on it. We've got a big update this week, so it's great working with those guys. It's great being on here. Last year's show was one of my favorite guest spots of all time, which is why I'm back. Of course, it's a lot of fun over here.
Well, you always, you are Familia, so that's why I had to bring you back. And so, just coming off the rookie guide, working on that, and just as you mentioned, the 2.0 version, the stuff that we're gonna talk about some of the changes in the rankings in a bit, but kind of extra insight doing it for a second year in a row.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, the Football Guys rookie guide is 150, more than 150 prospects this year. Last year, I think we started out with about 140. This year, we bumped that up. The first version of the rookie guide is a free version, so it's out there. You can download that version. You'll always be able to download that version. So if you're like, man, I don't like what he's saying, but I want to check out the rookie guide, you can always do that. The next couple of versions are Football Guys subscribers get that. So we go in depth with, we have just a quick rundown. So if you just want to get a short little glimpse at what a prospect is, see if you're interested in them, like some of your deeper guys, then you can just read the rundown, and then you can go into the scouting report, the strengths, the weaknesses, the projected draft capital, the player comps that we have in there. We have a lot of fun with those. And now we have all of the combine testing. We have all of the relative athletic scores from Kent Lee Platt at MathBomb on Twitter. And so ideal landing spot stats. There's a ton of stuff in there. We have big boards, everything to get everyone ready for their dynasty rookie drafts. And it's always good to get ahead. That's why we're here talking tonight, I think, is to get everyone ready for the rookie drafts. And so it's time. You can go download that free version right now and look out. Version 2.0 might be out when you're listening to this. I'm not sure when it's dropping, but it's coming soon.
But hey, you know what? And I'm gonna, if you all haven't checked it out, make sure to check it out. The great thing about it, it's bite-sized chunks on every one of the players and stuff that's so actionable that you can get that you're going to take that into your rookie drafts for dynasty, and also kind of get you a head start for the redraft season for when the players get the landing spots. I know that's going to be one of the later versions after the draft is in there, and that's where it's really coming in. So also want to make sure you're following Christian on Twitter at C Williams NFL. Make sure to find him there. He's got great stuff on there. So, he pushes all his content out there. So yeah, get him in there. So, you mentioned you touched on the the combine. And, a lot of people have talked about this is an underwhelming rookie class of running backs. Maybe they pale in comparison to another group that we're going to talk about in a second. But did your outlook improve, change at all on this rookie class?
So I think what the combine did this year is it kind of confirmed some things that we needed confirmed. I think a lot of there were a lot of questions around a ton of guys, and I do think that there's something to be said about there's no Bajan, there's no Jahmyr Gibbs in this class, and so you kind of have to look for specific roles within this running back class, and what roles do we think can be filled, and what guys could look at maybe a 3-down workload. I do think that this class has a few of those, and I think that the combine kind of helped us gauge exactly who that is. There were a few fallers in the new version of the rookie guide. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but there are certainly some guys that are very intriguing. Could be maybe just your home run, second and third down type of guys. There could be a few guys with 3-down workloads, and then there could also be your pass catching specialists, which I think we have a few of in this class. Which for fantasy, we like those guys. We like the guys, especially in PPR formats. Like there are a few guys in here that are very, very intriguing, and I think the combine helped that out.
No, I love it. I love it. And I think it was fantastic. And you mentioned Bijan and Gibbs. They were 2 of 6 rookies who had over 100 touches last year. So you talked about the different kind of skill sets and everything like that. Could we approach that this year? Obviously, landing spots are going to be there, but guys that you think can handle the rock that many times?
I think so. 6 is kind of a lot. So one of our top 5 players, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but like Jonathon Brooks, I'm not sure what his recovery time will look like. So maybe he doesn't quite get to 100. There are a few guys at the top. Trey Benson's one guy that I think will certainly get to 100. Jaylen Wright, I'm hoping that he gets the draft capital that would suggest that he's going to get the 100 touches. But it is a unique year in that there are a lot of free agent running backs as well that are not returning to their teams based on everything that we've seen. And so when you start to factor that in, guys that may have been drafted last year that will get more opportunity this year because one of those guys has left. I'm thinking of Tyjae Spears, of course, but there are certainly a lot of variables that go into this. I think probably 4 to 5 rookies this year could approach that number. But obviously landing spot is going to be critical for all of that.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. Now, you're talking about landing spots. I want to talk about a different position group that has really been blazing trails. And obviously, Xavier Worthy was the one who kind of was the lead dog on it over at the combine. This wide receiver class is being hailed as one of the best ones, and guys really showed out at the combine last week. So when you're how much did the guys like Worthy, and I mean, Roma Dunze had so many guys had great combines, even without Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. running and, doing anything in the combine. Did you get even more pumped up? Because I know you're not just running, you do all the positions, but how pumped up did you get about this position?
Oh, this is one of the best wide receiver classes I've scouted. And in fact, I think I would stack it a little bit higher than that 2020 class that was pretty legendary in itself. But this is one where I think we have, 2 special players. I think I can see a Hall of Fame path for 2 to 3 of these guys. And then there are guys just juiced with potential. There's, I love Troy Franklin. I think from his combine, that obviously didn't make everyone excited because he ran the gauntlet a little bit weird. But I caution people on that because Garrett Wilson had a rough gauntlet a few years ago, and now he's in the top 5 in dynasty wide receivers in most rankings. But Troy Franklin's a guy I love. Adonai Mitchell had a great combine. Brian Thomas Jr. Is raw. He's new to the position, but he's an incredible athlete that I think has room to grow and was already very good. So then you mentioned Worthy. I like Xavier Leggett. I know he's not for everybody, but there's Keon Coleman, who has just massive potential. And then you've got your small guys like your Ladd McConkey's, your Ricky Pearsall's. I love me some Jacob Cowing. I think that he's got potential to be a really high level performer at the NFL level. So yeah, this wide receiver class is just, it's deep with every flavor. And so I think that's when you're looking at the combine there, you saw all the different flavors, which was really cool. We don't always get that in every class. Last year was a fairly small wide receiver class, and this one is got some big dudes that can run really fast and have wide catch radiuses. So it's an exciting time. If you need a wide receiver in fantasy football, this is the year to need one.
And I think it's great that I think some guys are going to get pushed up in the draft because the fact that a lot of the stud receivers are staying home. When it comes to the free agent class, guys are getting tagged and they're staying. So you've done multiple mocks already. What's the most wide receivers you had in the first round?
I've been cautious with it because the record is 7.
Mm-hmm.
The more I do mocks, I did one. I didn't publish one this week. I pushed it to next week because of the rookie guide update. But I think in my next one, I'm going to have 8 in there, which would break the record. So
That's
you
awesome.
start to think, you start to think though, like 3 probably gone in the top 10. And then we're getting into the guy who broke the combine record for his 40-yard dash time, which we know the NFL will value, right? Then you've got the 2 big guys that also ran in the 4.3s that are probably going pretty high. Then you factor in Lad McConkey, Troy Franklin, Xavier Legette. I think those guys all have opportunities to wind up in the back half, especially because a lot of those teams in the 20s need wide receivers. And then there are teams that may actually have a wide receiver spot open. And I think of the Steelers a lot as a team that Deontay Johnson's being floated around in trade talks, and they don't really have a succession plan. So that's a wild card for another team in the 20s to take a wide receiver. So I could see as many as 8. I think anything more than that is like really forcing the wide receivers into the first round, because this overall draft class at the top is just stacked. The tackle class is great. I love trench play, so I love talking about the offensive and defensive lines. So I do think that some of the defensive positions are a little weaker, so that's why we see those wide receivers. But yeah, I think 7 to 8 is kind of what we're looking at.
That'd be just so sexy. And you know what? And we could even still have a good second round with so many guys that are going out there. I think Jeff mentioned that like 17 guys that could go in the first 3 rounds, and that's just spectacular. And that's before you even get like I mean, we're not going to expect a Puka Nacua every year, but he went much later than those. He was a day 3 pick. So thank you, by the way, Les Snead and Sean McVay, for that, from all Ram fans out here. But yeah, I think that's just wonderful. And I think it's better for the NFL. I mean, it's more of a passing league, but it's going to be awesome. Yeah. And you mentioned, I think you mentioned 9 names down there, and Adonai Mitchell, or was Adonai Mitchell one of the three big guys that ran fast? So
yeah, he was one of those speedy guys that kind of shocked everyone. I mean, I knew he was a good athlete, but man, that was a fast 40 time.
You know what, and I remember in talking with Jeff, I mean, Adonai Mitchell was a guy that we both liked, and I know you guys have talked about him so much. I mean, I just love the way he moved. I mean, he's so smooth, kind of like, remind me a little bit of a taller version of Chris Olave. Just the way he moved, he glided across the field. So I'd love to see a 6'3" version of Chris Olave who could run that fast. So that'll be fun. Oh, you got me pumped. So I got one before we jump into these guys right now. So and it's one thing that I've kind of started wondering a little bit if we're starting to not get like the bell cow running backs, because some of the greater athletes are migrating to different positions just for more longevity. Maybe some are going to wide receiver. We're seeing bigger guys there. But I heard an interesting interview with Marshall Faulk on the Rich Eisen show last week, and he's a Hall of Famer. He knows the running back position as well as anybody. And he talked about, some guys have to want to get the ball more, have to demand to get the ball, work their way into getting better in the passing game, and just, earning the more carries. But Is that too simple, or is it really kind of like predisposed right now that so many coaches are going to be going with committees if they don't have a Christian McCaffrey?
I mean, there's some merit to it, right?
Yeah.
Because I think when you look at, there is a Christian McCaffrey, and then we also saw there was a Jahmyr Gibbs towards the end of the year
Yeah.
last year, where I mean that kid has the talent to be as good as Christian McCaffrey. I think certainly younger players don't necessarily have the right to, well, not the right. I think they have the right to say whatever they want, but they don't have the bandwidth to demand the football. But I
Right.
think what he's saying is like, you work your way and you have to get the ball. Christian McCaffrey has to get the ball, or the 49ers aren't going to do anything. They're not going
Right.
to win the game. That said, I do think that the running back position is so unique in that if you don't have a guy who can withstand, you know, touching the ball maybe 20 times a game, which I think a few years ago that was pretty low, but I think that's kind of where the ceiling is. If he can't withstand that and he's got a bad offensive line in front of him, then you're looking at, well, even Christian McCaffrey would struggle behind that. And even Jahmyr Gibbs might struggle behind a bad offensive line. So there is some nuance to it, but I do think that coaching staffs prefer to go with one guy if they can, because it's easier. That one guy can run every play. You aren't showing your hand on what plays you're calling. Last year when the Bears would put in Roschon Johnson, it was a passing play almost all the time.
Yeah.
And so when you have guys that are specialists like that, you're kind of showing the defense what you're doing. And I don't think too many OCs want to do that. So sure, I think some of these guys could stand to work on their receiving chops a little bit more and get a little better in the passing game. It's one thing that I think Josh Jacobs improved on quite a
Yeah.
bit throughout his career. But no, I like that notion. I think Marshall Faulk's in a very unique position to say things like that too, because of how dynamic he was, on the ground and through the air. So.
And also, yeah, I guess also shout out to those guys. Get where he didn't mention it, but just get on the field, get better at pass pro. So that for running backs, that's the way to get on the field. So just do that. So, oh mi amigo. Okay, let's get into the running backs. All right. So I'm going off of mostly the order of the version 1.0, but I'm going to make you gave me a little preview, so I'm going to make a little change, but I'm going to jump into number one, Jaylen Wright, who really had himself a good combine there last week, and that may have I love the size, I love the speed, just kind of surprising breakaway speed for me, even against the SEC defenses. Ran the 40 in 4.38. How much did that help him become potentially just, kind of like a day 2 pick?
I think it was important. I think, when you turn on the film, it's very clear that he should be running that fast, because his breakaway speed it stood out. It's what put us at Football Guys onto Jaylen Wright, I think, is, we watched a lot of college football, the Derby Royale. We are constantly doing college content as well. So this was a kid that popped on a lot of analytics guys, charts and sheets and whatever they're doing, and so they were in our Discord and saying like, hey, this kid's probably worth a look. But as soon as you turn on the film, you're like, oh yeah, that kid can play at the NFL level, and he can do so at a pretty high level with a very high ceiling. I think he certainly has some things to work on, but he comes in. He's our RB1 in version 1.0, and he's our RB1 in version 2.0, because I think that speed size combo with good contact balance and honestly really good patience to kind of wait for blocks to develop. Those things matter at the NFL level, and he's one of those guys that he got on the field and he worked on that pass pro, and it is very apparent that he takes pride in how well he does in those situations. So he's a player that I think can handle a 3-down skill set, and I think could wind up being one of these 150 touch players where you're pretty happy to have him on your fantasy roster.
Yeah, I think I'd love to see him go somewhere like, I mean, gosh, wouldn't it be great if he went to like Houston?
Oh
and
yeah.
that would just be, oh, that would be so fun. That would be so fun to see that happen. So hopefully, I'd love to see him get just an every down skill set. Yeah, just great stuff all around on him. It's I just loved his running style, and I think he's gonna. I think he could be a good one at the next round. Please, please, please don't have this be like Zach Charbonnet and
Right.
going somewhere. So, por favor. All right, this one's my backyard out in USC now. Full disclosure from me, then I think I may have told you this last year. I'm a UCLA fan, so but I know what the tape tells me, and it's not just the tape from USC; it's the other USC in South Carolina, but also the Senior Bowl, and he did. Yeah, Marshawn Lloyd. When you look at him, does he have kind of like that well-rounded skill set that's going to translate to the and as well as the size and speed?
Oh yeah. Um, he's he's been one of my favorites for a very long time. He was my RB1 before I stumbled upon Jaylen Wright about halfway through last year. Um, and he's my RB2. So my rankings at the top kind of line up with the Football Guys consensus rankings, which I love when that happens. That makes me feel a lot better when Kevin and Jeff are on my side. But no, Marshawn Lloyd is one of the most explosive players in this class. From his ability to just one cut and get upfield and do so with incredible contact balance, incredible burst. He ran a faster 40 at the combine than I anticipated. I thought he was like a 4.5 guy with really good 10-yard split and really good explosives. And what we saw is really good explosives and a fast enough 40. He ran in the 4.4s. And so I think we saw a lot of his pass catching ability, or what he showed in that disgusting Lincoln Riley offense. That offense was really, really bad last year. But he was your check down merchant. But there are flashes. There's a play specifically. I can't remember who it's against, but they run the running back seam route. He comes out of the backfield and he just runs up the seam and he catches the ball like a wide receiver and he gets upfield and no one can catch him because he's 5'8", 220 running 4.46 with incredible bursts. Like this is a kid that I think could be maybe, this is probably a little lofty, but a top 12 dynasty running back as soon as maybe after, depending on the situation this year. I think he's locked in to be a day 2 pick just based on the film. And normally my eyes don't lie to me. I have a little bit of Zach Evans. I get nervous with those guys, but Lloyd to me has more translatable skills. And I think that he's going to wind up in a situation where he could be the starter this year.
I can't tell you how many times I picked up Zach Evans last year. I can't tell you how many times I picked him up last year, when Kyron Williams was out. So, just really hoping on hope. So we'll see. I love what you said about Marshawn Lloyd. I think I think that the play speed, definitely at the Senior Bowl playing against top-notch players, I think that's really where he showed out. And I'm trying to remember. I know that play that you're talking about. It might have been San Jose State. One of the before the Pac-12, before they got into Pac-12 action. Not quite sure, but no. Just I'd love to see him get into someone where not just getting into a situation where it's not just 100 touches, but maybe 150, 200 touches, because I think he could do a lot of stuff, especially in the passing game. I think it'd be great to see that. Now he's coming up. He did have an ACL surgery in 2021, Familia, but it seems like he's well past that. And we've talked about. You guys also remember I co-host the Injury Prone podcast with Dr. Porras, and it's that second year, the further away they get, and with the youth and athleticism, they can recover much better and have a nice career. So we're going to do that. Since we're talking about ACLs recoveries, Jonathon Brooks, Jonathan with an O-N, as not a lot of people are doing that, but Jonathon Brooks, he tore his ACL in November of last year, so he will be about 10 months out. But first off, I'd love to have you talk about his skill set, because it was vast, and I mean, good size speed combo. But again, that probably missing a big chunk of training camp is going to impact him, don't you think?
I think so. And I also worry because of the type of runner he is, what that ACL might do to him. I was looking into,
Yeah.
he's not a Saquon Barkley level, like cutting and bursting out of those cuts. He kind of glides in a way, but a lot of his skill set is built on being elusive. And I think sometimes there's a little with players like that with the ACLs. To me, I don't have any medical data on this, but to me, it seems like those players take a little bit longer to get back to what they once were because whether it's just a mental thing where they can't cut as hard as maybe they did before or what it might be. But so to me, like when you look at his rookie year, I think the NFL still values him very highly. I think he has good film. I'm lower on him personally, if only because when I look at running backs, I look for a special trait. And when I look at Jonathon Brooks's film, I see a lot of good traits and maybe great traits, but I don't see anything that stands out as like that's going to get him, you know, 200 touches a year, for example. He reminds me a bit of like a James Cook type player. He's a little bigger, so we don't need to. He's like a bigger version of James Cook. So, which is a fine player at the NFL level. I know Kevin in the rookie guide had his comp as Le'Veon Bell, which I think is an interesting one. I think Brooks is probably a little bit better of an athlete than Le'Veon was. So if you're looking at projected outcomes, I think that could be on there. But yeah, I just hope that he can get on the field and be getting impact snaps towards the end of next year. I'd love to see him go to one of those teams where they do have a veteran, kind of like Tajay did with Derrick Henry last year. I think that would be a good situation for Brooks to land with someone where he can sit, maybe learn some more of the nuance at the running back position, and then kind of go from there. I was shocked that he declared, to be honest. I thought he was going to go back for one more year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he wanted to get kind of like NFL doctors and to kind of take over his rehab for him. So
Probably.
that could be the case. I mean, some guys just want to get into that paycheck a little bit earlier. I mean, the NIL definitely helps, and I know
Right.
Texas it's not like they're hurting for funds to throw at a player. But no, I know what you're saying. I mean, I kind of remember how Brees Hall and Edwin talked about a lot. He like nailed it perfectly that Brees Hall was going to have about 4 weeks where he was really kind of like up and down, kind of uneven, but that he was going to be really good in the back half. And I think he won people fantasy championships. I don't know if we can compare it, can do that with Jonathon Brooks because this is going to be his first NFL training camp and it'll be a different one. So, but maybe attrition is a big thing in the NFL when it comes to running backs, and maybe this is something that maybe in the back half of the season he does help out.
Mm-hmm.
Want to get into Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. Oh, you got a smile on your face. I'm gonna give you the floor on this one. I love big guys who can run, but yes, let's go for it.
So Braylon Allen's one where I've been so up and down on his film for the last couple of years, 3 years that he was in college, that it just makes me laugh because I think he's one of those players where that's how it kind of went for him. A lot of folks valued him as the Devi RB1 for a couple of years, and it was
Uh-huh.
kind of a debate between him and Travion Henderson, who should be in this class. I really wish he would have declared. Would have been more fun talking about the running backs, but he'll be in next year's class. It'll be next year's class is pretty insane on paper right now. But Braylon Allen, to me, the thing that also made me smile is his weight coming down about 10 pounds from what he played at Wisconsin, I think is going to be a good thing. What worries me a little bit, just a tiny bit, is that he didn't run the 40 at the combine, and I know he's got speed, but I think it's build up speed. I don't see too many people catching him, but I think it takes him probably 20 yards to get going, and that's not very conducive to the 40-yard dash. So um, I do think that he is one of those guys where I was probably too low on him. I went back to the film. That Wisconsin offensive line was not I've never seen a Wisconsin offensive line quite like that. And they kind of put him in a situation where he's running in a scheme that doesn't fit his skill set at all. Ches Malusi also went to Wisconsin. He was a better fit for that scheme, and that's why early in the year before he tore his ACL, he was looking like the better running back at times. But if you get Braylon Allen in a downhill scheme, a la the A.J. Dillon role, very specifically, I want Braylon Allen to go sit behind Aaron Jones and be kind of that A.J. Dillon, because I think he's A.J. Dillon plus with a little bit more skill set as a pass catcher. And I think that gives him a higher upside for fantasy for sure.
That would be so fun. That would be just so fun, because you're right. I looking at the two, yes, I could totally see that comp. But yeah, him being a step up from that, yeah, and it wouldn't have to move out of the state, so that won't
exactly.
That'll also help him out there. So, yeah, just yeah. So let's see. I love big guys who can run. Gosh, I mean, he's not as big as Derrick Henry, but getting up there close. So, so let's go to Florida on this one. Florida State, Trey Benson, also a guy who's been getting a lot. I mean, some people have put him on the top of their boards when it comes to these running backs. Where do you kind of look at him?
Benson's one, I think, in a similar light, where his early season stuff. So his 2022 film was top of the running back class. I think I could have made a case that he was the RB1 coming into this year or close to it. He was right up there with Travion as I was doing my Debbie rankings or my summer scouting grades that I put on these kids. Trey Benson was tied with Travion early in the year. I think there were some disappointing performances from Trey Benson. That Florida State offense was really running through Jordan Travis, was really trying to be active and getting Keon Coleman the football, getting Johnny Wilson the football. And so Benson had a couple 3 yards per carry games where, we're sitting under 100 yards, and that wasn't the player that we saw in 2022. But as soon as Jordan Travis went down, and really it was building up before that, we saw this explosive player once again where, he ran a 4.39 at the combine. He's up close to 215 pounds. He's 216 actually, but just incredible burst, a little more tackle breaking than you'd expect from a guy his frame. He reminded me in 2022 of college Dameon Pierce, where we saw all the signs of a really good running back at the NFL level, but we do need the draft capital and we need a scheme that fits him, because that's not what he's currently in. So, and that's me. I loved Dameon Pierce. I think he's a very talented player. I think Benson is a step up from that. And I think Benson's probably a better athlete than him. And so when you're talking about ranges of outcomes, Kevin comped him to Alfred Blue, which I guess Kevin, he pulled some old comps out. We got a Tevin Coleman for Jaylen Wright. There's a Tyrone Wheatley comp in here. So
I love that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, so Trey Benson, to me, I think he really helped himself at the combine. And I think this is another one of these players that I think all the guys that we've talked about right now are day 2 picks, maybe round 3. So it not as good as the top 50 picks, but I think I think Benson might be the first running back off the board this year.
That could be interesting. Him being bigger is going to definitely help him. So, and you're right. He helped himself at the combine. So we're going to see where that goes. So, gosh, I mean, one thing that's kind of come out, and not necessarily about any of these guys. A lot of people have Daniel Jeremiah came out and he said that he's got about 6 running backs that are in a cluster that could that almost could be a game of chicken, where, I mean, obviously these guys could be that we've talked about could be in that are likely in that cluster, where it's like nobody wants to be the first one, but they don't mind being the last one. Do you kind of agree with that?
Oh yeah. There's a reason that our rankings are going to change quite a bit in this version 2.0. And that's basically because I have a grading scale. It's out of 100. I grade guys on 10 metrics. including their athleticism, and I use RAS for that. So when we come out of the combine, or going into the combine, I had, I think, 12 guys within 2 points of each other, which is how this class is kind of viewed in my mind. And then that athleticism kind of helps to shape some of what we did see, didn't see, go back to the film, see if I was missing something. But now it's, let me just double check because I've got it open right here. There's a lot more separation. So we've got a cluster of 6, the ones that we've talked about, plus my guy that you mentioned in the intro. He's in there for me. And then after that, there is a clear separation of, okay, these guys can be impact players, but I think they're going to be round 4 impact players, and we'll have to fight for that impact. Whereas those guys, I think, have kind of separated themselves as guys that can be, starters as soon as next year.
Awesome. Well, this next one, I know the Blake Corum. I know you being if I remember correctly, you're an Ohio State guy. So I'll understand if you don't want to talk about him for a long time. But no, I mean, a good prospect. I mean, from Michigan. People are already comping him to go to the Chargers in like the 3rd round or something like that. So we'll see if that really is the case. I'd love to see a good running back go to the Chargers. When you look at him, what are the things that you like the most about him?
So I want to then go back to the grading scale I just talked about and mention that it's 10 things, including production. Blake Corum didn't have the most productive year from the metrics that I look at, which would be your yards after contact, your target share, your breakaway percentage. These are things that relate to fantasy points. So I've done a lot of work to build that production grade. He wasn't super productive, and he's still in that tier right below. And if I'm just going by film, I think Blake Corum is still at the top of this class. I think his film is as good as quite a few running backs that we've seen in the last few years. He is a very, very skilled runner between the tackles. And I know that running style mixed with his frame doesn't always work, but we've seen it. We've seen guys like that succeed at the NFL level because they're able to be, elusive in a phone booth. They're able to make something out of nothing. And Blake Corum has consistently done that at Michigan. What I worry about a little bit is his pass catching, because we didn't get to see it a whole lot at Michigan because they had Donovan Edwards, another guy who will likely be a day 2 pick next year if he improves on his vision a little bit. But it's certainly something that I think he was one of those winners because the workout from the combine was tremendous. He was the smoothest player through all of it. He was catching footballs naturally and looking good doing it. And so when you talked about, Chargers in round 3, sign me up to get him on a team that Harbaugh is calling the plays for, or influencing the offense for at the very least. Because I think that he will look at Blake Corum and say, all right, I know what you can do. Let's run you for 4 years and then see what happens after that. The knee injury scares me. I do want to mention that because the knee injury is why he wasn't productive this last year. He certainly lost a little bit of explosiveness, but he came on down the stretch, kind of like you were talking about with Breece Hall, what we could see with Jonathon Brooks. And so I'm hoping that's fully behind him and we don't have to worry about it moving forward. But it's something to note that there was a knee injury that vastly impacted his play that could pop up in the future.
Yeah, that one, especially running on the turf at SoFi Stadium, could be a factor. But again, you mentioned it. Run them for 4 years and then see what happens after that. So, and I think the Chargers are going to end up getting. I don't know if they'll have just one guy being the bell cow back. So we'll see about that one. So, next one. Other side of that Michigan Notre Dame rivalry, Audric Estime, or as we would say in Spanish, Estime. Notre Dame guy. I know because of that, fantasy managers are gonna be talking about Kyron Williams. Is there a comp? I I don't see it. Kyron Williams is a much smaller guy. I saw a good runner between the tackles, not much work on the outside. Kind of like a north-south runner, not just kind of hit his lanes, but he did not help himself. His RAS score, his 40 time was low at 4.72. His RAS score isn't particularly sexy at 6.48. Are we starting to get into outside of those six guys? I mean, is he a guy that may struggle at the next level to have his game translate?
I think there's a role for him, but I think now when we talk about pretty much the rest of these guys, it's a very condensed role. His especially is not very conducive to fantasy points unless he's your primary goal line back, where I could see him scoring a lot of touchdowns. He's a bigger guy. He can handle, just plowing through an offensive line. I think that he can do that. I don't necessarily believe that he's a guy that can handle 15 carries a game. Kevin comped him to Deontay Foreman. I think that's a fantastic comp because I think that Deontay Foreman has shown flashes of being a very good NFL running back that doesn't really do much for your fantasy teams. And so that's why I worry a little bit with Estime. He'll still be our RB7 in the rookie guide in version 2.0 here. And he was productive. And I think that he, has a little more upside than maybe we thought heading into last year, but probably not the upside where when he was breaking off those massive games early on, I think a lot of people got very excited and put him close to RB1. I don't see that. I think that he's a very role-specific player that could, pairing Estime and Blake Corum would be an interesting running back room because you've got a guy who's kind of finesse between the tackles, but still good between the tackles. You can still run an inside zone or a power running scheme. And then you've got Estime who can do the same thing. You can kind of keep everything inside and just have one primary rushing attack. I think that's an interesting pairing. I think that him going to a situation where that's the case is probably the most ideal because you'll hope that he gets those high value touches at the goal line.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, it's landing spots can be huge with him, and so we're going to be keeping an eye on that one really, really closely. So next one, Will Shipley from Clemson I liked his film. Not very shifty, but he felt like he was surprisingly fast. I mean, maybe it's one of those things like he's white. I mean, he's white, so I'm going to be like, oh wow, he's surprised. He surprised me a little bit when with how quick he was, but seemed pretty good in the passing game. I mean, he didn't. If I'm correct, I didn't see him run at the combine, right? So I don't know if he's battling an injury or something like that. But where do you see his game kind of going at the next level?
He is also an interesting one where I think he's one of the best pass catching backs in this class. I think he gets too many Christian McCaffrey comps. There's totally different players. And of course that's the comp that's being thrown out there because, he's a white running back, but I do think from a pass catching skill set, that is certainly something that he can hang his hat on. I think he's an okay runner. I don't really love when he has to, be a one cut type of guy. I like when he can show off his patience behind, pulling guards and show off his vision when he gets into the second level. I think those are things that he's good at, but he's not very special in those areas. I talked about, I look for special. Special is his hands out of the backfield. And so what I hope for Shipley is that he's on the other side of the spectrum. That's another, pair Estime and Will Shipley together, and you have a pretty solid running back room because you've got a guy who can catch passes and, kind of fill that role. And then you've got the pounded into the ground type of guy. But I don't see Shipley as that, which I think could really limit his draft capital. We've got a 4th round projection on him. I would tell Kevin I think he's probably moving down based on the no testing because I think that implies that he's not going to run very fast. And so if he runs at his pro day, I think we could get disappointing numbers, and then we could look at a 5th or a 6th round pick and hope that he can catch some passes for someone. And that's the unfortunate part, because once you get past that top group, now we're just looking at, we are certainly hoping that the landing spot is good.
You mentioned the CMC comp, which, I mean, please don't do that. Please, everybody, don't do that. It's like Jeff was talking about. People were trying to comp Lad McConkey to Cooper Kupp, and it's just like, no, come on. He's like, Cooper Kupp's like 5 inches taller than him and much different type of player. And Will Shipley, I mean, if you want to do a white running back, maybe Danny Woodhead or something like that. Kind of like someone that that's good in passing game. I don't remember if their body types are similar, but yeah, something like that, or James White. I mean, James White, I think, is a little bit taller. So we'll do that. One guy that kind of struck me a little bit was Jace McClellan out of Alabama. He didn't seem to be a patient runner, not like Le'Veon Bell, where Lev Bell could almost look like he walked and then boom, he was gone. But I mean, it looked like he, was able to, find the holes while he's, kind of like not crazy movement. But I liked it, didn't seem to have like great breakaway speed. But yeah, just I think there was some helmet scouting with Brian Robinson as the comp. But for you, what were some of the how do you see him kind of like jump into the next level?
He's one of those other guys that just didn't hit the production thresholds that I was looking for my production grade. So it really bumps him down in my grading scale, which I say that not to, knock on the actual production grade, because so much work goes into it and it is important, and that's why it's incorporated into the grade. But from a film perspective, what I see on film is a top 5 back in this class. I think that when you talk about being a patient runner, I think that's very accurate. I think he's decisive. I think that's one thing. He just consistently got more decisive throughout his years at Alabama. It's another thing. I think that he can be one of those 3 down types of guys as well. I think he has a skill set to catch the football. I think he's got, decent yards after the contact ability or tackle breaking ability. I think he's fairly elusive. There's one play specifically against Michigan where there's that first touchdown run against Michigan in the college football playoff where he's just out in an island one-on-one against a safety, and he jukes him out of his shoes, and the kid couldn't even touch him. He was just gone. And so you see those little clips of elusiveness that you're like, wow, like this kid might be a lot more than what people are giving him credit for. I wish he would have been more productive in that offense, because they had a good offensive line. None of those running backs really stood out. So he had an opportunity, I think, to really take the bull by the horns and have one of those Brian Robinson, Najee Harris like years at Alabama, and it just didn't come to fruition for him. But yeah, I think maybe the 40 time for him might be concerning if we see him running his pro day, because I think he's one of those other build up speed types of guys where, I think he can pull away, but I think it's going to take him a little while to get going too.
Love it. No, I can't add anything else to that one. So, okay. Isaiah Davis. Mi amigo, I give you the floor.
Yeah. This is an interesting one because I've fallen for a South Dakota State running back in the past. His name's Pierre Strong. He plays for the Cleveland Browns right now. And actually had a pretty impactful role this last year, which I want to point out. No, people will want to comp Isaiah Davis to that situation, but those 2 players could not be more different. Pierre Strong was an athlete that really needed to learn the nuance of playing running back. He needed to develop vision. He needed to develop patience. Isaiah Davis is the complete opposite, where good athlete still, and the combine really helped him. He's bumping up pretty high in these rankings in version 2.0, partially because we're including my rankings and making consensus now, and I have them maybe a little bit too high, but you see a really good athlete and you see a player that can create space when there is no space. He is one of the most elusive running backs I've watched in a long time, and I know the competition level much lower. But if you can play, you can play. And when I watch Isaiah Davis, I think that kid's going to be able to play at the NFL level, even if it's not, maybe he can't take on 20 carries, although the size is not a concern with Isaiah Davis. He is, I believe, like 223 pounds off the top of my head. I've got it probably right here. 218, so off by 5, but 6 foot, good frame, sturdy build, can add more to that frame. His relative athletic score was in the 8s. And you talk about, I think his elusive rating. I'm not a big I don't look at the elusive rating as much, but that's one person that the analytics guys are going to like him as well because he was incredibly productive. So breaks tackle as well. He pulls away when you see him out in space. They ran him as a wildcat quarterback. This is a kid. I just love this kid. I hope that he finds a role. He's one of those where I want him on the Chargers actually because I want to see what Harbaugh is able to do with a guy like this who has Blake Corum traits and ability to kind of create something out of nothing, and also has the size and no knee injury. And so I'd be intrigued by something like that, but I just really hope this kid gets an opportunity because I think he can play.
Yeah, I love that. I think he's got the size and speed combination, and I just want to see what it's going to look like at the next level. So that is me. But yeah, Familia, you know what? Do yourself a favor, find somebody who looks at you the way Christian looks at Isaiah Davis tape. Okay. So just make sure to find that, and you'll be happy forever. So,
Yeah.
Okay. I know this one, you gave me a little bit of a preview. Bucky Irving is kind of dropped in a little bit of the Football Guys rookie guide rankings. The combine didn't help him. He's smaller. Just what were some of the things that kind of dropped him from 5 out of the top 10?
Combine really hurt him. I do want to say that. Combine's not everything. You've got Kyron Williams, who was a poor athlete when he tested, and we saw what he was able to do last year. Sometimes if you can play, you can play. But I mentioned on the Football Guys Dynasty show this week that these are two very different situations because Kyron Williams was a dominant college football running back that didn't kind of rely on the scheme to highlight some of those strengths. Once again, that's a player who can create something out of nothing. Bucky Irving is a player who can't pass block, which is a problem at his size. That's the main problem at his size. And that's why even when I was in on him, it was like, man, he's really got to find a pass catching situation where they just want to get him the ball in space. But getting him the ball in space isn't necessarily looking like a great thing now when you see what that athleticism looks like. He wasn't that good at forcing missed tackles last year, and when you're that small, you kind of have to be. And so he's sub 200. He's 192. For me, I think the main thing, I think he can still play. One of my comps for him when I was, just going through the film watching process was Devin Singletary, but I think Devin Singletary is probably a better athlete than him. And so when you talk about workload and what that looks like at the NFL level, I think Singletary probably has a more upside than Bucky Irving, which is why we've got him down to RB11 in version 2.0. I still believe that there's something that could be there, but it's going to take a very unique and specific situation for that to come to fruition.
No, I think I think you're right. I mean, I think maybe he got helped by the offense a little bit more. But yeah, if he can't get better at pass pro, it's not going to get him on the field. It's just not going to get him on the field. So it's going to be tough on this one. Mm-hmm. So this next one is one of my guys on this one. Full disclosure, Familia, make sure if you haven't already and if you have a subscription to The Athletic, read the Zach Kiefer profile on Ray Davis. His backstory is incredible. I mean, basically a ward of the state, essentially homeless for the most part, and he raised himself up. Now he's got a Vanderbilt degree, and now he's played for the SEC, two different teams in the SEC. So, uh, obviously experienced back, but you know what? I know when it comes to dynasty, you want the younger guy, but I'm like, you know what? I'm a production now. If he gets in the right situation, great. I like the way he ran. I like the way he squared his shoulders and hit the hole. Things that you like, anything that, I mean, obviously there's warts to his game. What are the things that you see in his game?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think his story probably speaks to how he's gonna do at the NFL level as well. We've seen him do it at every stop, and sometimes it's as simple as this kid wants it more. He's gonna be better than the people in his running back room, right? Um, and you see that. That's how he runs. He runs like he has to run that hard, or he will lose his job, and that's kind of a good part of his game. As far as burst goes, I have him really, really close to the top of the class in my ratings. I think elusiveness. I don't see him as an overly elusive player, but I do think that there's a lot of really, really good stuff to his film. I think his footwork is among the best in the class. I have that tied in my grading scale as well. So, and then I think he is a capable pass catcher. We saw him, a lot of these running backs, it's really tough to project pass catching ability because, like we talked about with Marshawn Lloyd, you're just kind of a dump off artist. You're catching dump offs, which if you're an NFL level player, you should be able to catch a dump off. But I think Ray Davis showed enough aggressive hands and ability to attack the football that we could see him kind of handle, 40 catches a year. I think that's kind of within his range of outcomes. Now, you're right. He's older. I think that's going to matter a little bit, especially when we're talking about dynasty and rookie drafts, because you're getting him for 3 to 4 years, and then he's probably not worth much because he's going to be past that age threshold, right? So you have to really, if you're drafting him, I think you're going to get a good discount on him, even if he gets drafted on day 2, which I think is a real possibility. But the player I really like. One thing I have a modifier in my scale, and I put -3, and I put he was born in 1999. That's pretty much the only reason that I'm bumping him down a little bit, because like I said, from a fantasy perspective, you're not going to get a whole lot of window from him, but I think that window could be a top 24 back at some points, depending on the situation that he goes to.
No, I think so. Hoping for good things. Hoping for good things, because he's just, I mean, that story itself. I mean, you mentioned kind of like that want to. In Spanish, it's called ganas. It's kind of that grit, that determination. That's the thing that you want to see in a player. And when it comes to running back, I think it's so good. All right, one last guy, and Isaac Guerrero. He is I'm going to claim him as a Latino, so I'm going to do that right there. Coming out of Louisville, had a fantastic one of kind of like one of the most surprising combines. 4.33 in the 49.99 RAS score, which is almost perfect. I mean, how much did the combine help him? Because I'm going to admit, I didn't love his tape. I felt like he went down in first contact for being a big guy as he is. I wanted to see him truck guys a little bit more, but what are kind of, I'd love your assessment on him.
He doesn't play that fast. I think he's a good athlete, and I think we see a good athlete, but I watched a lot of Louisville film. I graded Jack Plummer. Unfortunately, now that's a quarterback that played at Louisville. Those that don't know, but so I watched a lot of Louisville film. To me, I don't even necessarily know that he was the best running back on that team. I think Jordan has a case for that, but he didn't do the testing, and so you wonder, like, okay, I think Guerrero certainly did a lot for his stock, because I think he went from undrafted to a day 3 pick. And I do want to caution fantasy and dynasty managers that this relative athletic score, while impressive, should not and will not bump him anywhere higher than probably round 5 based on what his film is. And I would even argue that round 6 or 7. But that being said, players with that type of athletic ability have a ton of upside if they do get an opportunity. And so he's probably worth a dart throw depending on where he lands. We keep mentioning the Chargers, but another place that I think would be interesting is like Arizona behind a James Conner who has health issues. I mean, I know they have guys that they like as well, but we've seen stranger things happen. I mentioned Isaiah Pacheco as a guy where I think it's an athlete playing running back. I think with Isaac, it's kind of an athlete when he's at the NFL Combine and not so athletic when he's playing, but he's trying to play running back, and so I'm with you. I'm not a huge fan of him, but I was impressed, and he made for a good story Combine week because we almost got a perfect 10 relative athletic score, which we got last year with Anthony Richardson, got 2 years ago with Jelani Woods, and so we almost got another one this year, but not quite.
We'll see what ends up happening with him. I mean, landing spot's going to be such a big deal, and and really, I mean, what kind of a room he ends up in. It's going to be. I love it. Well, we got through the guys. But I've got one question, one running back question. Year 2 guys going out. So we talked about the 6 guys. Any guys that you're still in dynasty, you're still lighting a candle of veladora for them to possibly contribute more than they did as rookies?
Yeah. Kendra Miller's one that every time I click into my spreadsheet that I put my first iteration of dynasty rankings into, I see his age pop up and I'm like, oh yeah, that was the youngest player in last year's class. And while he was kind of a disappointing rookie, that was still a player that a lot of people thought highly of. And I thought, he was a good player. I thought his draft capital was expected, and I thought there was certainly some room for him to grow as a running back. I think year 2 could be really, really good for him. He's probably my favorite one. I think Chase Brown is going to be, there's rumors that Joe Mixon's out. I don't know if that's official yet. Everything's happening so fast in the NFL these days. It could be official by the time people are listening to this, but Chase Brown, to me, a player I didn't love. I thought the film was only okay. I thought for his size, I thought we'd see something a little bit more. But then he got to the NFL and he just was an explosive playmaker. He was a great athlete, and he was able to take, screen passes to the house. I think if they go a different direction, it could be Chase Brown and a day 3 rookie. And so I think we could see a large workload for both of those guys, Chase Brown and Kendra Miller. Those are really the only 2. Roschon Johnson gets a shout out, but I think the Bears kind of want to either add to the room or just run Khalil Herbert fully into the ground for another year. I want Zach Evans to be a thing, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to be. Maybe those off-field things were a little too much for Zach Evans to be an NFL guy, but I hope that he gets an opportunity. But those other 2 are probably the ones that I think have an opportunity this year.
And when you talk about Evans and me being a Ram fan, I mean, one of the things that I think is going to happen, and I don't love it for fantasy, but I think they're going to add to the running back room just because Kyron Williams suffered an injury in that last game, that playoff game, and that would have knocked him out. I mean, I believe it was a broken hand. So that's the thing. There's going to be durability question marks with him. There's going to be an opportunity to kind of like maybe be his understudy and be ready for just in case. So, mi amigo, this was fantastic. So, this Familia FFB, we can't get out of here without something to talk about food. Any recent discoveries, or do you need any recommendations to try next time you're out?
So it's a chain. There's this place in Columbus, Ohio. I don't know if they're everywhere. Local cantina, great burritos and quesadillas. I'll tell you what. We just had it 2 weeks ago. Just great stuff. We had we ordered they have like this queso that they throw some jalapenos in, and we get all the fixins pretty much. But it was a good time. It's been a long time since we found a good Mexican restaurant that was a good one.
Well, if they have them, I want you to try either Al Pastor pastor
Okay.
tacos, or
Okay.
carnitas.
Yeah.
I'll send you. I don't know if you have carnitas, or I don't know if you've tried birria.
Mm-mm.
That I'm gonna send you the spelling on that one. So if those two you don't find them too many places, but when you do, if you could get it done right, I mean, I know somebody who found good birria in Kentucky told me it changed his life. So I'm sure you
Believe it.
could find it in I'm hopefully they have it in Columbus. So, oh, mi amigo. All right. We've talked about the rookie guide, but if you want to give it one more plug, anything else you want to plug, please feel free.
Yeah, rookieguide.footballguys.com. That's where you'll go to get the rookie guide. So, check that out. Or if you just search up on Google Football Guys Rookie Guide, I'm sure that it will populate the version 2.0, which is the one you want. But really, we mentioned it briefly at the top. But version 3.0, we have full fantasy football analysis. We have depth chart analysis. We have the most updated big board, the final big board as you go into your rookie drafts. There's a lot of value in getting that final version. I highly recommend that one. I recommend all of them, but version 3.0 is really the kicker, and that comes out the Monday after the NFL draft. We work all NFL draft weekend. We take days off of work sometimes from our full-time jobs so that we can make sure we get that rookie guide to you guys. Hope my boss doesn't see this. But we make sure we get that to you as soon as possible because we know that rookie drafts start right after that. So rookieguide.footballguys.com.
Familia, it's great stuff. It's great stuff. And make sure you're following Christian at C Williams NFL on Twitter. So, so much good stuff coming out. Again, muchas gracias, mi amigo. So thankful, so grateful that you did this, that we were able to run it back again. Familia, make sure you're giving us a follow on YouTube. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Get this great content. I'm going to be chopping up these episodes into smaller ones so that if you don't want to listen to the hour-long show, you're going to get it in the 3, 4, 5-minute chunks. So get in there. Also, make sure you're following. If you want to listen to this on audio, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, go there. So again, this is Jorge Martin. I'm so grateful that you guys here. Muchas gracias otra vez, Christian, for joining us. And remember, todos somos familia. Salud.